Hello book lovers and welcome back to our channel. Today I'll be counting down my top 5 favourite book series. So I'll be counting down my top 5 favourite book series from number 5 to number 1, as well as putting in some few honourable mentions of series that I haven't quite finished yet or that aren't completely written yet. So without further ado, let's get started. So in position number 5, my 5th favourite book series is the Rubinrot Trilogy by Kerstin Gier. And this series is originally in German, but there are English versions available, and I did read the English versions. So this series is about a girl who discovers that she can time travel, and whilst she time travels, she has to go through lots of different challenges and lots of fighting and action, but not too much fighting and action because there's also a bit of romance, and she has to figure out what to do as she falls in love, basically. And what I liked about this series is this aspect of time travel that I haven't really read before in a book, because usually, a bit of a spoiler warning here, usually the character is able to control their time travel, but with this there is a group of people who have to help her control her time travel, and you're not sure who's good, who's evil, and sometimes you're not even sure what's happening in the book. But I really loved reading it, and I do reread it often. My favourite book in this series is the 3rd one because everything is explained, and I like that everything just makes sense at the end. So yeah, if you would like to read this book or this series, I sincerely recommend it. And one more thing, if you're not bothered to read the book, there are also 3 movies out there, but if you want to know what is actually accurate based on the book and the movie, I actually have done a trilogy of videos about each book and movie, comparing them about what happens in the book and what happens in the movie. So if you want to check that out, the link should be right up here. So in 4th place, my 4th favourite series, book series, is the Pegasus Series by Kate O'Hearn, and it's basically about a girl who discovers a Pegasus on her roof, and it's about Roman mythology, but it's also a bit about spies, and it's obviously fantasy, and it's a very interesting series because the first series kind of is more based on Earth, whilst it then gets more based in fantasy as it goes along. I would recommend this book series. There's 4 books in the series, and my favourite book is the 4th one because I feel like it is the most mature last time I read it, and when I read the series I do usually go back to the 4th one the most because I just find it the most interesting. But all of the books in the series are very good, and I do recommend all of them. So now moving on to my honourable mentions, and this will be the first honourable mention of the honourable mentions, and it is basically the book that is right here. And this is a very famous book series. So this is the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, and this here is the first book in the series, A Game of Thrones. As most of you probably know, this series was adapted into a TV show, and I have read most of the books. I haven't read the most recent one, which is kind of sad because it came out like 8 years ago, but I am planning on reading it soon, and I have finished the TV shows, but because I personally was not happy with the ending like a lot of other people weren't, I am not putting this series on my list of series because I am waiting to see what happens in the final books, because I just want it to be different. But basically this is based on the War of Roses, which is a real war that happened in real life between 2 kings and queens, 2 royal houses, but this has a lot of royal houses and they're all fighting for one throne, or to be the king, basically, which is, as the title suggests, a Game of Thrones. It is a very graphic series, so I would not recommend this for children, but if you are mature and more of an, if you are a bit older and you don't want to, and you have a lot of time to spare. This series is very long, it has a lot of books. They're not done yet, but they are very good and very interesting to read, so I would recommend this series. Honourable mentions because it's not finished yet and I don't like how the TV series ended. So now moving on to number 3. So my third place for my third favourite book series is the Matilda Saga by Jackie French. This is the first book in the series and it's probably my most read. I don't have a favourite book in these series because the series is so different. Every single book is based around a different character, but they all have something in common with each other. And then the final couple of books that have come out recently are the ones that are connecting all the characters together. As far as I know, the series hasn't finished yet completely, but personally I haven't read all of the books yet to the very end, but I do like the books that I have read, which is almost all of them. This one probably being my favourite, but like I said, I don't really have a favourite. This is A Waltz for Matilda, the first book. And basically the series is about, like, you can't really say what the series is about because the series isn't about the same thing. Every book is based around a different character and they're all based on Australian history. And that's what I find so interesting about it, is that they are historical based novels about where I live, Australia, and I just find that very interesting. So if you want to learn more about Australian non-fictional history, or Australian fictional history, this is fantasy fiction. So if you want to learn more about Australian fictional history, I would recommend this series because it is very, very good. And I think there are still more books to come, so very interesting. Number 3. Now my second place for my second favourite book series is the Books of Beginning series by John Stevens. This series is very, very, very good. I say that about all of these series, but what I like, so this series is about these 3 siblings who each are able to possess a magical power based on what book they find. And so for example, the oldest sister can travel through time. The middle brother, I forget what the middle brother can do, but he also has a power based on the book The Fire Chronicle that he has. And the younger sister Emma, she has the power of, or she masters the Book of Death, which controls death. And I like this series because it's filled with lots of action and adventures, but it also has parts of, like, it also has some romantic aspects to it, mainly with the older sister, and it has lots of fantasy elements, but it isn't also just fantasy. It is also a bit of real life tension, but there is a lot of fantasy in this series, so I really like it. Now here comes another honourable mention for me. Now this book series is an honourable mention because I've only read the first book and the second book has only recently come out, so it's not a series yet completely, but the series is called The Shadow Cipher, and the book that I have read from the series is York. Now this book is very interesting because it is a sort of a detective spy fantasy novel about these 2 siblings who have to, like, save lots of riddles, or they have to solve lots of riddles in order to save the place where they live. But then it becomes more of it becomes actually quite scary at the end, because they realize that everything has not been real, or that what they think was real hasn't been real, and everything's kind of been flipped up on their head. But it's very, very interesting, and it does leave you with a plot twist, but luckily the second book is out. Haven't read it yet, but I do highly recommend the first book because it is super, super interesting. So I don't think I said this. This is The Shadow Cipher by Laura Ruby, which and this is the first book, York. So for my first place, my #1 most favorite book series, and most of the people who know me will probably know which series this is, but you all probably don't know me, or a lot of you probably don't know me personally. So without further ado, my #1 most favorite book series is the Tintenwelt Series by Cornelia Funke. And this is a trilogy, the Inkheart trilogy, and it has 3 novels in it, Inkheart, Tintenherz, Tintenblut, Tintentod, or in English, Inkheart, Ink Spell, Ink Death. And this here, the one that I have with me, is my favorite one of the series, and this is Ink Death, which is the final book. And basically it's about this father-daughter duo who both, when they read out loud, the characters that, or what they read about, comes to life or comes out of the book. And what basically happens is one night whilst her father is reading to her, to the girl Maggie, her mother gets sucked into the book and some of the bad guys from the book come out, and they basically have to find a way to get the bad guys back into the book and find their mother or her mother. But that's only what happens in the first book, because in the second and third book they go into the world that is Inkheart and they discover lots of magical fantasy things. This is a very, very famous book series in Germany. I don't know how well known it is in English, but there is a movie to the first book, which isn't the best, but it's very accurate to the book. So if you don't want to read the first book, watch the movie. But there is no movie for the second and third book, which I do think are the best, progressively getting better throughout the series, with this just being the best book in the whole series. So thank you all for watching this video. I was hoping to keep this a bit shorter, but I don't think that worked quite well because I love talking about my favourite books and movies, or my favourite book series and books in general. So tell me, have any of you read any of these series, and what did you think of any of them? Also, what is your favourite book series? I would love for you to let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to give this video a like if you liked it, and to subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to stay safe in this time that is happening right now in the world with coronavirus and the pandemic out there. Make sure to keep washing your hands and stay clean, and look after your own hygiene, and make sure just to stay safe. I hope you all liked this video, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.